Welcome to the next episode of Isn't That Rich? I'm your host, Jared Gravatt, here with Jill Franks, and we have special guest, Eric Witch is here from FSB Insurance, and he's going to talk about the ABCs of home insurance. Eric, welcome.
Welcome on.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know I met with you recently, and you were kind of explaining to me kind of the ABCs of home insurance, and I was blown away just by how it just put it in a really simple way that, I don't know, it just made sense. So
yeah, I think that was a fun conversation to have as a team that day, just kind of to make it more simple for people to understand exactly what their coverage is. You know, when you get your deck pages and you get your policy and it's 55 to 70 pages long, it gets overwhelming. So I think today, we'd like to break that down a little bit and make it a little bit simple for people to understand that part.
Yeah, I know when I look at my insurance policy, like you said, it's 50 pages long. I couldn't tell you right now what is included and what's not. And so I feel like this is an excellent opportunity for us to explain to some of our listeners just exactly what their coverage means. So
I feel like the majority of people, I mean, myself included, for the longest time, I mean, insurance can be kind of hard to understand. There's a lot of ins and outs, but I think that there are ways to really simplify it and so that you do understand your coverage and those kinds of things. So
absolutely. And the whole goal of this is to educate the customer and make sure they are aware of what coverages they have on their home, right? So the last thing we want to do is to have a loss and then go to the customer and say, well, you don't have coverage for this. Well, if we'd have did our job correctly, we would have known about that. And so I think that's a good part of the discussion to have today.
Yeah, definitely. So let's get started.
Okay.
Let's start with the big old A.
Big A.
What does A mean?
Yeah. So A means it's the coverage of the dwelling or the house. So let's say, for example, you just purchased a house and you've got a 3-bedroom house, 2-bathroom with an attached garage. So that would be coverage A. And that's the dwelling coverage, meaning that's the coverage that you have on the property, on your home. If something would happen, whether it was a fire or a lightning or a windstorm, it would specifically cover everything structural wise. So that would be the shingles, the siding, the windows, the doors, that type of material would be covered in coverage A.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So anything that's locked down in like on the building itself, on the infrastructure.
Correct. Yeah. So pretty well attached to the structure. So cabinets, anything attached to the house, specifically could be a part of coverage A.
So the dwelling includes anything tied down. So that's not including like your home appliances or anything like that. That's something else.
Yeah. So that would be a completely different coverage. That would be coverage C.
Okay.
That is a part of A. So the way A comes about is we take your square footage of your house, the type of home it is, if it's a custom built home, what type of flooring, what type of cabinetry, what type of finish you have on the inside, what type of roof you have. And then the carrier will have an estimated replacement cost of that house. And that's what that coverage is based off of.
That does include, what about anything behind the walls? So I'm thinking of like your sheetrock, your plumbing, your electricity, all of that stuff, all of that wiring, that's included in this dwelling.
Correct. Yeah, that's all in coverage A. So anything to make the interior of your house functional. So you have your plumbing fixtures, you have your wiring, your sockets, all of that included in that piece.
Okay.
Your HVAC is included within that too.
Your HVAC is. That's good to know too.
Good to know. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So if it's attached, it's part of it.
Pretty well. Yeah.
That's part of your dwelling.
Pretty well. Yeah. One way to think about it is if you would ever move and you had to pack a U-Haul, what would you pack in that U-Haul? That would be coverage C.
Okay.
But anything that would stay within the house would be coverage A.
Okay.
So
anything that stays when you move.
Yep.
That makes it simple for me.
Yeah.
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 So I know kind of insurance has been kind of a hot topic recently due to a few changes in both like the roofing policy and inflation, all those kinds of things. So would you mind kind of hitting on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's a shift in the industry where the roofs are, in the past, up until the last couple of years, roofs were automatically just replaced. So if your roof was 20 years old, it was at replacement cost. Well, now the carriers are shifting into a new market piece where they're rating the roof based on the type of roof and how old the roof is. So let's say, for example, we just bought a house and it's 10 years old. So the roof was a 2014 roof, and it's a shingled roof. Well, depending on the carrier, they would have a percent settlement option that if you had hail damage or wind damage to that roof, it would be based on that percent, based on the year and based on the type of roof. So if you have a shingle roof, it's going to be paid less than a metal roof.
Okay.
Versus a slate roof. So it just all depends on the type of roof and how old it is. And what you're seeing is a shift in that settlement percentage that they would only pay a portion of that roof if it had to be replaced.
I see.
Which is a drastic shift compared to what we've seen in the insurance industry for years.
Yeah.
Is this just something we are seeing happen locally? Is this nationwide?
I think it's an industry-wide shift. So from California to Florida up to Michigan, it's just a shift. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think they're realizing the cost of replacing these is so astronomical right now due to the replacement cost of the shingle, the material, the labor, that they're shifting that. You know, if you think about it in terms of, well, that roof is 20 years old, but then when I purchased my house or I built it, my shingle said it was a 35-year shingle or a 30-year shingle. Well, then my roof should be good for 30 years.
That's what I would think. That's what I would think.
Yeah. But on the insurance side, you're thinking, okay, well, that has an actual cash value piece basically because it has deteriorated or has not as much value as what it had when you purchased it or when you built it.
And I think about it too like this. There has been so many changes in weather too in the past 10 years where it used to not be. So I feel like I was talking to Jared and Ashley the other day and I said, man, I've been in my tornado shelter more in the past 6 months than I have the entire time I've lived in Southern Illinois, which has been since 2015. And so,
And I feel like
I just feel like these occurrences are happening more and more often where insurance companies are having to deal with this more often than they've ever had before.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Even like hail and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Just seems
More
like
prevalent.
being beat down.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you because is there a type of roofing that insurance companies prefer homeowners to have? I know, some people say a standing seamless roof, like the metal roofs are really, a good investment if you're looking to build a new home, or maybe it is a shingle home, or, some companies don't even the old thatched roofs anymore that, so is there a type of roof that if people are looking to build a new home that they should maybe invest more into?
Yeah, that's a great question. It depends on the carrier.
Really?
It's really interesting how one carrier would prefer one shingle or metal roof type to another. And so it's really interesting whenever we go through the underwriting process and one carrier would write a metal roof and have it replacement up to 80% at year 20, then a shingled roof would be replaced at 40% at year 20. So it's really going to be something you probably need to talk to your insurance agent and your carrier to figure out, what the preference is on that. In general, the metal roof is the preferred as far as holding the value over the life
longer
at this point.
Well, that's good to know.
It's good to know.
Yeah.
I think we're seeing more and more metal roofs.
Yeah. I know if we look to replace, it's a lot more expensive, but if it holds up longer and I'm not replacing shingles or messing with leaks a lot more, it'd be better.
I think so too. I think initially it was so like an industrial type look. People were like kind of hesitant to put it on a home.
Yes.
And so now I think they're starting to realize there are benefits outside of just, the metal piece of it.
Right.
So
for sure.
Yeah.
Should we move on to B?
Let's move on to B.
Okay.
What's B stand
So
for?
what is the B in the ABCs?
Yeah. B is the other structure. So anything unattached that's on your property. So that could be anything from a tool shed, could be and this is a big thing in Southern Illinois right now, is your electrical solar grids. So that's
yeah.
something that would be considered a B coverage as well. Could be a fence, could be a carport, maybe a pool that's unattached. So anything that's unattached to the house would be the unattached structure, and that would be fall under coverage B. So the thing about coverage B is it is pretty well at 10% of coverage A.
So what does that mean?
Okay, so let's say you have a $200,000 house.
Yes.
And that's coverage A. Coverage B is going to be 10%. So we're going to look at $20,000 you have for coverage B or
Okay.
an unattached structure. So, and that, that's something you probably need to look at, because let's say you have, if you think about now building something that's a 2-car garage unattached, you're going to exceed that $20,000 pretty quick if the wind would happen to knock it down. So it's something, I would recommend taking a look at and make sure that that coverage is reflective of what you have on your property.
So in that situation, you have this coverage or this unattached garage. Is there a way that you can insure that for its full value, or, just like you would the home?
Yeah, you can get an endorsement to increase that.
Okay.
And that's something, reach out to your agent, let them know what you've had on your property or what you've added to it, so that we can definitely add the right coverage to your home.
Yeah, because I think of my sister and her husband built this beautiful shop where he does a lot of his work. And so I'm just wondering if that's only insured at 20% of their home value, then that, if something were to happen to that, it definitely would be
especially
a
around
bigger
here,
loss.
There's a lot of big barns and horses, you know what I
Tool
mean?
sheds
and tool sheds and
in Minnesota, fish houses.
Fish houses. We don't have a lot of those. Yeah. So what about boats? What would that be?
Yeah. So boat, you would have a separate coverage
Okay.
on that boat. So it would be with a separate carrier. You could have it on the same carrier, on the same policy, but it would be a different coverage.
Okay. So basically like a barn or a shed or those kinds of things.
Yeah,
Structurally.
absolutely. Structurally.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting.
A hen house.
So it's-
we're in Southern Illinois, so you never know what you come across. But
Right.
you never
Gardens.
know.
attached to the land, but not the foundation of the house itself.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let's move to C. What's C?
C. So C is personal belongings. We talked about coverage A is if you would move what stays in the house, pretty well is kind of what you think about coverage A: electrical, plumbing, mechanical, that kind of stuff. Coverage C would be if you think about a U-Haul and what you would pack in that U-Haul. So your clothes, your silverware, your jewelry, your appliances, your TVs, your couch, that type of personal belongings is what you would pack in there. And so that's what's going to be covered under coverage C. If something would happen, we talk about the windstorms and all that. Let's say your roof gets blown off, and as a result of that roof, there's water damage in your house. So now your clothes are ruined, your furniture's ruined.
Computer,
electronics. Correct. Yeah. So we have a lot of that in our house that would fall under coverage C, and that's where coverage C comes into play, is anything on that personal belongings side.
Okay, so that would be like your appliances, your washer and dryer, your refrigerator, all
Correct.
that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah.
Because I'm taking my appliances if I ever move.
All part of negotiation, Jill.
Sub-zero appliances, right? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. But yeah, so that's what we like to recommend, is taking pictures of your rooms when it's set up, because after you do have a fire, it's so overwhelming to think about, I forgot that I had this piece of jewelry, or I forgot I had this in my room. So we recommend when your room is staged and your house is staged, just go around. We all have our smartphones now. Just take a quick picture of each room and have that documented there. And what better way to have that piece to go over with your agent whenever that time comes.
I've never thought of doing that. I've rented before, and I always do that once my stuff is, because I bought renter's insurance in case of theft, things
Absolutely.
like that. But I've never thought of doing it just in my home in case of damages, to even think that would be part of the home insurance.
Yeah,
that your
absolutely.
belongings. Yeah. That's
Well, what's
interesting.
funny about that story is, my wife and I are into Christmas trees. And so that's how that first conversation came up. She's like, man, we've got this tree here. And I'm like, we ought to just take pictures of it.
Yes.
Because if something would happen, I would forget, what was here and what was there. And so we just have now just gotten to a point once we we recommend that going forward is just take a quick snap. It doesn't take 5 seconds. Just go in each room and take your pictures.
Does it help to save receipts?
It does.
It does.
Yeah,
Okay.
it does. The other thing is to remember coverage C, and this might be another day conversation, but your policy will probably have certain limits on certain items. So like you might have a policy that has jewelry that has a $2,500 limit. Well, that's great, but we have jewelry and it can get expensive. So that $2,500 is going to go pretty quick. So then we would schedule that jewelry with an appraisal and add it to your policy to make sure it's insured at the right amount.
And that would be another endorsement, or would that be a separate
It's kind of
policy?
like a rider.
Okay.
Yeah, it'd be the same policy, but you just kind of have a rider on your policy to cover the ring or the watch or a painting or a gun or whatever it is.
People might have collective art and things that are expensive like that.
Yeah.
That you would...
We've seen people put a rider on a baseball card. That,
Really?
Yeah, that's, has been autographed and has been graded and it's worth a lot of money. So they want to add that to their policy.
So that kind of brings me to my next question is like, what's the responsibility of the customer when it comes to updating those things? Should we connect with the insurance company like every 6 months, as soon as we get, like, let's say I want to buy the Mona Lisa and put it inside my tiny bungalow. Do I contact the insurance company like immediately? Like those kinds of things. Cause you may start off with a blow up couch and a television, but then a year later down the road, you may have some fine art or jewelry, who knows,
Yeah.
But, I think is the customer only responsible to update the insurance company on the C coverage, or A, B, and C, as far as making sure that they're properly covered? Because obviously inflation has been a huge thing in just the past 3 years. So my curiosity is it the customer's responsibility to make sure that that's updated, or you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a mixture of both.
Okay.
I think as an insurance professional, we're responsible to provide you the coverage that you have on your home. So it's up to us to sit down and have that conversation yearly. And we try to do that once a year at least, to make sure that we ask the right questions to ensure that we have the proper coverages on the home, if any updates have been made, any purchases or whatever. But I would recommend, if you do make a purchase of a painting or a Mona Lisa or something like that, that you immediately, contact your insurance company and your agent to make sure that that is added to your policy to get that on there. Yeah.
That's good.
We all buy things, we all add, fixtures or whatever to our home, a pool or whatever, but we want to make sure we get that added in a proper time to ensure that that is covered.
Yeah. And as far as your belongings go, taking those pictures, that's not something that the insurance company needs ahead of time, that if that's just good for your own personal records. Am I right in saying that? Okay.
Yeah.
So if I have a timestamp photo of my stuff in my house, that would probably suffice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's just more of the documentation piece of, whenever, heaven forbid a fire would happen, but when you have to document those lists and, provide proof that you have that in your house, it's nice just to take that and have that inventory right there in front of you.
Sure.
So it's been overwhelming for people.
Absolutely.
So anything we can do to help out.
Yeah.
So really the rule of thumb is to connect with your insurance agent at least once a year.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just get insurance and don't think about it, but
you
need to think about it.
Well, this is me. When I closed on a property, I was like, as long as I have the insurance, I don't really care what it's, I can close on my building. And that was the last time I looked at it. I mean, a lot of people do that. They're like, I'm insured and I just set it and forget it. But it is important to look at it and see what you're actually covered for.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the main reason why, as Jared alluded to it earlier, is the replacement cost has gotten so huge lately that just because you bought a house for $250,000 5 years ago, well, now to rebuild that house probably would be close to 500. So if you're not insured to value on that, that's going to be an issue when it comes to rebuilding that house. And so, yeah, I definitely recommend that sitting down at least once a year.
It's crazy how, like, I was researching and said the cost of just plastic pipe in the past 3 years was up 155%.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think everything has gone at least 35%.
Absolutely.
So
I was watching the news last night and they said orange juice is up 30% since the start of the year. So
it's crazy.
Inflation.
Yeah, absolutely. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, we can't afford to not have insurance or to have that coverage, and there are disasters and emergencies happening every day.
Sure.
In Southern Illinois, there's tornadoes hitting down like every other week. So it's just really important to make sure that you're properly covered. So.
Absolutely.
I have one last question for you. So say that I know that my home value has increased. So you talked about the 200,000, now it's, or 250,000 replacement cost. Now it's 500,000. What is the process for that? Do I have to get an appraisal to prove the increase? What does that look like with my insurance company?
Yeah. So each carrier kind of has a built-in inflation guard that they will add to the policy or the home to increase the value over time. But I think it's always good just to make that appointment and call your agent and make sure, hey, I know that my policy is set at XYZ. I would like to make sure that I'm insured to value. Okay. And so you won't necessarily have to have an appraisal. It's just the cost estimator would be ran on the house based on the square footage, any changes you've done to the house or any additions. And so to make sure that replacement cost is up to date. That's the key.
Got it. Thanks, Eric.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
No, but if you were to leave our listeners with one lasting word of advice about this, about checking their coverage, what would that be? Yeah,
the advice I would give from our standpoint would be just to make sure that, yes, it's more expensive to increase your replacement costs. And we understand that. But you have to remember that if your house would get blown away or has a fire in it, you want to be built back and put back into the same situation or as close as if you were. So if that replacement cost value is not correct, you're not going to be in that situation. So, and while it seems a little bit more expensive, it would be worth it, because that's when it really hits home. And that's why you're thankful to have a good agent, a good carrier, and a good company with you by your side.
So true. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you guys. I appreciate
it. Yeah.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
So Jill, where do we go from here?
Be sure to check out our show notes for this episode, and also be sure to follow us on social media and subscribe to our newsletter. And we'll see you next week.
See you next week.